Good morning. Our scripture passage today is about one of the disciples, Thomas. Now, I think that Thomas gets a bad rap. He doesn't deserve the nickname Doubting Thomas. He was not with the other disciples when Jesus came to the house. They got to see Jesus, so it was easier for them to believe that Jesus was alive. Since Thomas was not there, he said, "I need to see in his hands the print of the nails and put my hand into his side, or I will not believe." Haven't you ever had a moment where someone told you something, but you did not believe them? Well, I have, and it happened last week. I was talking to one of my friends about baseball, and all of a sudden he said, "I have hit a home run before." Now, in my head, I'm thinking, there is no way that he hit a home run, because he's a lot smaller than me, and I haven't known him very long, so I wasn't sure whether or not to believe him. I think the same kind of thing happened with Thomas. It wasn't that Thomas did not trust Jesus, it's just he did not completely trust the people who were telling him that Jesus was alive. After all, Judas was one of the disciples, and he had just betrayed Jesus. Also, in Thomas's defense, it is hard to believe that a person could come back to life after they died, even if that person is Jesus. I have another question for you. Was there ever a time when you were so confident in someone that you had no doubt at all when they told you something because you trust them completely? A few years ago, there was a bad storm in Carrollton, and we had a tornado watch. I was scared, but my mom said it would all be okay, so I was able to stay calm while we waited for the storm to be over because I trust my mom. Thomas trusted Jesus completely, just like I trust my mom. John chapter 11 is a good example of how Thomas trusted Jesus with his life. Jesus had been called to see Lazarus and heal him because Lazarus was very sick and dying. To get to Lazarus, Jesus would have to go to Judea. The disciples tried to tell him that wasn't a good idea because the last time he went there, the people tried to kill him. But Jesus refused to listen to them. After a couple of days, Jesus said, "Let us go to Lazarus." That's when Thomas said, "Let us go with Jesus, that we may die with him." This shows that Thomas put all his trust in Jesus, even if it meant giving up his life. While I was preparing for today, my mom asked me a question. She said, "If you were Thomas, would you have believed that Jesus had risen from the dead and was alive?" I said, "Yes." When she asked me why, I said, "Because I am 11 years old." Mom said, "That must be why the Bible says in Matthew 18:3, 'Truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.'" Even though I believe that Jesus came back to life, I still have questions about other things in the Bible, such as, if Jesus is God's son, then who is God's father? Jesus is Jewish, so why don't Jews believe that Jesus is God's son? When Adam and Eve came into the world, how old were they? How did people in the Bible live so long? It's not just me who has questions. Do you see all of the questions around the sanctuary? These are some of the questions that people in our church have asked. If you have questions about Jesus, it just means you're normal. You can still have questions about Jesus and believe in Jesus. That's called faith. When Thomas had questions, Jesus was not angry. He said, "Peace be with you." And he showed Thomas his hands and his side. In Psalm 46:10, it says, "Be still and know that I am God." This means you know that Jesus is God and that he is always with you, no matter what, even if you have questions or doubts. We can have faith in God's power and goodness, even if we don't understand it all. Jesus said it in another way. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who have not yet seen and yet have believed."
Haven't our children done a wonderful job this morning? Yes. I am so proud of them for the hard work that they have put into preparing for today. And I'm also proud of this church for the way that you encourage them, the way that you nurture their gifts, and help them discover who God is. One of the many things I love about children is how they approach God with their whole selves, with wonder, laughter, doubt, honesty, and questions. So many questions. You might have seen behind me the questions that Dalton referred to in his sermon. Who made God? How does God hear everyone's prayers? How does God make a hurt person a healed person? These are just some of the many questions that I have heard from our kids. If you have spent any time with kids, then you know that questions are one of the ways that children explore their faith and try to figure out who God is and what it means to follow God. That's why I deeply value creating an environment in our children's ministry where children feel safe to ask all the questions. Ministering to children is a constant reminder that having faith doesn't mean having all the answers. Faith is about being willing to show up, to ask questions, to wonder, to listen, to watch for God, and to believe in something that we can't fully know. I like the way John Westerhoff describes faith. He says, faith is like the rings of a tree trunk. The younger the tree, the fewer the rings. Rings of faith grow as a result of interacting with others and with God. This definition of faith places a significant responsibility on the shoulders of the adults in a child's life. But what an awesome opportunity it gives us as the church. We get to help grow rings of faith simply by having relationships with our children and our youth. The Bible gives us a great example of how meaningful relationships can foster faith with the relationship of the Apostle Paul and Timothy. Paul mentors Timothy, and in doing so, deepens his faith and equips him for ministry. Paul is constant in his encouragement of Timothy, giving him opportunities to interact with God and with others, and guiding him to become a leader in the church. Just like Timothy, our children and youth need people in their lives to encourage them and to show them what it looks like to live out their faith in God. Did you know that statistically speaking, youth who stay involved in church have at least 5 adults who intentionally invest in their spiritual and personal lives? Basically, it all comes down to this. Relationships with adults who follow Jesus matter in growing the faith of our children and our youth. If you happen to be in Sunday school this morning, then you heard the youth implementation team talk about the importance of having an expansive adult leader network. After 9 months of learning about the foundations of a healthy youth ministry, the implementation team has developed a plan that stresses the importance of having the entire church invested in our youth. Youth ministry and children's ministry cannot be done in a silo. It takes all of us. It makes my heart happy to know when these children who led our worship today graduate from children's ministry and they move up into youth ministry, that they will continue to have a network of adults to invest in them and to grow their rings of faith. When caring adults invest in the spiritual development of children and youth, it encourages them to grow in their faith by asking questions that explore and seek a deeper understanding of who God is. Children want truth they can hold on to. They want to know if what they're being taught about Jesus is true. The disciple Thomas approached getting to know Jesus in the same way. While Thomas is best known for his doubt, it is often overlooked that he asked questions of Jesus in order to understand him and his teachings. In John 14, Jesus is eating the Passover meal with the disciples, his last meal before he is to die on the cross. During this meal, Jesus starts teaching his disciples what it means to trust and believe in God. He says, "My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place I am going." It is at this point that Thomas says, "Hold on, wait a minute. We have no idea where you're going, so how can we know the way there?" Thomas is the only disciple that is brave enough to seek understanding. Jesus responds to him not out of frustration and not out of admonition for not understanding. Instead, he answers him by saying, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Jesus refers to himself as I am, Yahweh, the God of Israel. Jesus is saying, I am the way maker. I am the truth speaker. I am the one who shows you the most clear glimpse of who God is. Have faith and follow me. Thomas does get a bad rap, just like Dalton said. He's known as Doubting Thomas, but he wasn't the only one who doubted that Jesus was alive on that first Easter. When the women who encountered the empty tomb told the disciples that Jesus was alive, they didn't go out into the streets of Jerusalem to spread the good news. Nope, the disciples locked themselves in a room, scared of what fate awaited them. Instead of rebuking them for their lack of faith, Jesus appears and offers them peace. He invites them out of their place of fear and into the peace we receive when we have faith in the resurrected Jesus. Just like Jesus welcomed Thomas in his questions and his doubts, Jesus welcomes our children and all of us, just as we are. Maybe, just maybe, the faith of a child is exactly what we need to strengthen our own faith as adults. Perhaps the statistic that children need 5 adults to keep them involved in church and invested in following Jesus also works the other way around. Maybe each adult needs 5 children to remind them that their faith can be strengthened by asking questions. As Reverend Elijah Brown of the Baptist World Alliance says, salvation is not found in self-sufficient strength, but when we come to Jesus with uncertainty that welcomes miracles. Just as Jesus extended peace to his disciples and to Thomas, Jesus also extends that same peace to me and you today. He says, I am the way, I am the truth. Have faith and follow me. Be still and know that I am God. He also says, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. Wherever you are in your faith journey, Jesus will meet you there. Bring your questions to him. Bring him your doubts. Bring him your whole self, and he will offer you resurrection peace. Like Thomas, we have the opportunity to exclaim today, my Lord and my God. May that be our prayer, our confession, and our hope.